Welcome back, and the discussion is on African cities, because under the changing climate, we must be able to discuss cities. Please subscribe, click, so that when a video comes up, you will be the first to see. African city. Well, Africa is recorded as the fastest urbanizing place on the planet. And at this rate, the urban population is projected to double in the next 20 years. This implies that the concept of sustainable cities must now become an urgent imperative for these growing urban areas. And for these key targets, areas for the continent to invest in include energy efficiency, waste management, and green infrastructure. For example, on energy efficiency, with a changing climate, the globe is projected to be hotter. Africa, already warming faster than the rest of the globe, will see an increased demand for cooling solutions. Already speaking today, 359 million people in the continent are at high risk due to a lack of access to cooling. In addition, only 3% of total agricultural output in the African continent has access to cold chains in the first place. As demand for cooling solutions increases with rapid urbanization, electricity demand for cooling is projected to jump tenfold across Africa by 2040. This means what? It means the region will need to invest in energy efficiency, especially in clean cooling solutions. On waste, currently, as we're speaking today, up to 90% of waste generated in the continent is disposed of in uncontrolled dump sites and landfills. 19 of the world's 50th largest dump sites are in Africa, with most of this waste generated in urban areas. The waste problem will only worsen as the region continues to urbanize. This is an issue we cannot ignore. Increased investment in waste recycling is an urgent step toward building greener cities. Currently, only 4% of the waste generated in Africa annually is recycled, and yet 70 to 80% of this waste is recyclable. We are missing an opportunity. It therefore means what? What it means is the policy to incentivize informal waste pickers who collect up to 90% of recyclable and handle between 20 to 50% of the overall generated waste in Africa is an urgent imperative. It is an urgent imperative. These young people, these pickers, need to be supported and protected from harassment and stigma, and instead be given incentives in the form of tax cuts to enable them to acquire modern protective gear and equipment. The job and enterprise opportunities from formalizing waste recycling in Africa are significant. For example, let's take Nigeria. An additional 250 million can be added to the economy every year with an increased investment in plastic recycling. Let's take South Africa. Plastic recycling has created over 4,000 direct jobs and over 30,000 indirect jobs, and this has added over $16 million directly to people's pockets through the payroll. Let's take Kenya. Plastic waste recovered into paving blocks is enhancing sustainable buildings by generating building tiles that are up to 30% cheaper than conventional concrete blocks and 5 to 7 times stronger than concrete, while being much more affordable to transport. This is a critical advantage for Africa's building and construction sector, which is growing at a rate of 6.4% every year and into the next 3 years. Cumulatively, large-scale reusing and recycling generates energy savings, estimated at 87%. Therefore, waste, recycling, and reuse are urgent areas for Africa's sustainable cities. You cannot ignore this if you want to create sustainable cities and create jobs for the people. But there is also green infrastructure. The rate of storms in Africa has quadrupled, and flooding in African cities has increased nearly tenfold relative to the 70s. At the same rate, on the other extreme, drought frequencies have almost tripled in the same period. The implication is that there is an increase in drought and flood episodes, where periods of extreme precipitation are followed by droughts and vice versa. We are seeing this. The anecdotal evidence is clear. To be sustainable, it therefore means that African cities need to prioritize 2 aspects. I call them 2 key aspects. First is water harvesting. On average, an African city can recover and save between 2.3 to 23 million cubic liters of water to enhance fresh water availability. On flood management, green infrastructure solutions such as rehabilitating natural wetlands within the cities so they can become natural drainage for flood waters. Improve city planning to better protect natural systems such as wetlands have proven cost-effective, been over 6 times cheaper and provide up to 1.5 billion in savings compared to alternative grade infrastructure engineered solutions. These are practical environmental solutions that we must put in place. As an example, the application of green infrastructure in Cape Town in South Africa has yielded a flow of ecosystem services valued at over $280 million per annum, which is equivalent to 25% of the total annual municipal budget. But we cannot talk cities without talking about transport and connectivity infrastructure. And here, I'll paint a picture of what we need in the continent today, based on facts and figures. Africa is at times referred to as one giant construction site. Yes, it is. You go everywhere, you see construction happening. This scenario reflects the large infrastructure gap that the continent is accelerating to close. Specific to transport, while roads are the predominant mode of transportation in the continent, carrying 80% of goods and 90% of passengers, it is estimated that the road access rate in Africa is the lowest at 34%, compared to 50% in other parts of Africa and in other parts of the world. Africa has approximately 31 kilometers of paved routes per 100 square kilometers of land, compared to 134 kilometers of paved route in other low-income countries. With this low rate, transport costs are up to 100 times higher. These are realities. Well-improved infrastructure would facilitate trade. It will reduce the cost of doing business and it will enhance Africa's competitiveness. It will ensure that deficits that cost the continent up to 2% in reduced output every year are actually addressed. To bridge this gap, the region invests an average of $6.8 billion on paving roads. In 2019, Africa had an estimated 448 large-scale transport projects on road, rail, and bridges valued at $430 billion. Maximizing on this investment called for the region to be more deliberate in choosing routes to invest in. Specifically, prioritizing paving routes that close market gaps by linking high potential agro production areas and value addition centers to markets such as in cities will have a much higher return on investment than truck routes linking urban areas. This is common sense. In addition, in 28 years from today, up to 80% of vehicles sold globally are expected to be electric, as fossil fuel vehicles will increasingly be phased out. Africa will also be expected to follow this trend. One of the critical enablers for such a transition is the charging infrastructure. Investments in such infrastructure will need to be prioritized in rural areas to enable such electric vehicles, what is called e-mobility today, to close goods market gaps. This will go a long way to enhance the continent's return on investment. The question therefore becomes, infrastructure for what? Energy for what? Transport for what? It must be about connecting people to markets. It must be about ensuring that we green the entire infrastructure. We leverage on solutions that are not adding to emissions. We ensure that at least we look at the whole socio-economic lens and take the environmental dimension and do everything to address the triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, and waste. This is the new normal, and we must live with it if we want to drive transformation and development. Thank you.
I see youth holding certificate in their hands, waiting for jobs. Now I remind them to